Jay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, Jay, this is Matt. And first of all, I wanted to tell you I find you fascinating because of your journey into Orthodoxy from
Yes, I
Calvinism. And
remember you've called in before. I remember. How you doing?
okay, well, anyway, I wanted to the fellow, the Roman Catholic that you were just talking to, and this is something that hasn't changed. I've been debating them for 50 years, but they're all the same in that regard. It's just meant to justify the Pope's position and Catholicism's
You
claims.
cut out. It's what in their claims?
It's mental manipulation.
Yeah.
It's just like back and forth. Now, if they can't see when you have a Pope Francis saying that Hindus worship the same God and Jews and Muslims, that's outright apostasia in your face. I don't know what to say at that point. Now, this has been going on for some years with ecumenism and
Right.
that sort of thing. Having said that, they're never at peace because, and I talked to you about, and I want to mention this a bit further, asceticism and academia. But if you go into a full-blown academia, you end up, come unto me. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. Their burden is not light and their yoke is not easy.
Right.
Now, the Orthodox Church is the Church of Christ. We're the body of Christ. So they're in a place that's not the body of Christ, and it's right in their face. And for some reason, it's very difficult for them to get out of it. The only thing I could say is it's a pernicious heresy, as St. Irenaeus says, and they're blinded by that pernicious heresy.
Yeah.
Having said that, Jay, I have a question for you because it bothered me for some years, and you've been through the ringers, so you're going to understand what I'm talking about coming from academia. What a new term, something that we frequently hear these days, is an Orthodox person, even priests and bishops, they'll refer to heretics, Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, Catholics, Protestants. They'll say, well, because they're learned, they're erudition, they'll say the Roman Catholic theologian. I've even heard the Mormon theologian. This is so far from the ethos of the Church Fathers, who came out explicitly and called them heretics. St. Irenaeus didn't say against all the Gnostic groups. By the way, I've come to the conclusion that Roman Catholicism is Gnosticism with all of their secrets, and it's just another passion of intrigue, so their minds can just like go constantly in some direction. So my question to you is this. That came into the Orthodox Church, the idea that these heretical groups are somebody speaks and they're considered to be a theologian. My question to you is, do you find that to be problematic?
I see your point. I mean, I think it's just more of a colloquial usage. I mean, I know that in our sense, we would say a theologian is, one who prays and one who has Orthodox faith and all that. So I think we're really just kind of interacting with and talking to people in the world and outside the church that have this terminology. So even though it's not strictly correct, I don't think everybody's using it in a inappropriate way intentionally. But I see your point.
Okay, because I see it as part of ecumenism. Be nice. So you have to approach them in a nice way, and I can just tell you, monks I've known and bishops even that are ascetics, they're not into that nice thing. They're more or less straighten out.
Yeah, that's true.
For your own sake. So I think it's detrimental in that regard. Can you explain to me, because you were a trad cat, how the apostasia, Muslims are the same, blah, blah, blah. How can't they see that, Jay?
Well, for me as a trad cat, that's exactly the thing that led me to more and more kind of sparse fringe traditionalism. Was that in 2003, when I became Catholic, I kind of thought and assumed that the Roman Catholic Church would be kind of like what I read in the Church Fathers. And then when you go to the actual Roman Catholic churches, and it's really divorced from that, and it's like, just guitar masses and Skittles stuff and hip hop mass and just weird stuff going on. You see it's divorced, and then you think, well, now what am I going to do? And so for most people, they just hear about, oh, well, maybe you should check out the traditional Latin mass. That's where the real Catholic stuff is preserved. And so you go to that, and the thing with most traditional Catholics and Catholics in general is that they don't read the documents. They don't read Vatican II. They don't read Vatican I. I've talked to Roman Catholics all the time. I've been talking to them since the 90s. And I would say that probably 98% of Roman Catholics have never read Vatican I. I don't mean a summary of it. I mean the actual 15 pages printed out of Vatican I. So, they don't really know what their dogmas and doctrines say. So I think what happens is they just kind of latch on to whatever they hear from other people, pop apologists, the internet, YouTube. They latch on to what they think might be the best explanation. Me being a book nerd, I was not satisfied with that. So I was always reading the next book, this book, that book. Still got all my trad Catholic books up there on that shelf. And I just found that after so many years of trying to make it work, I just kind of gave up and collapsed on trying to make Vatican I, Vatican II, and all that, and Tradcat stuff make sense. Because clearly, I think eventually it just dawns on Tradcats, the ones that leave, they really realize, like, why am I defending this guy and this institution that hates me? And I think once you realize that Francis, if you're a traditional Catholic and you want to uphold, morals and all this kind of stuff, Francis doesn't care about you. Francis is shutting down your beloved Latin Mass. Like, he hates you. And eventually you come to just decide, I'm not going to support and try to convince people of this geopolitical tool in another country that hates me.
Okay, because I noticed something else that, God forgive me, but I was listening to some Tradcat, and he was talking about Francis, I guess, maybe it was somebody prior, Benedict, but that you can no longer, you can't kneel when you're receiving the Eucharist, and you can't receive it in your hand. You have to take it in the mouth, and how they are now currently, when they do that, they're like children. We're so childish.
I forgot Francis saying. I remember him saying something about that it's childlike. Right.
So this guy goes on to pontificate about this, and I'm like, how can you say that when you don't even commune little children, which is like right in front of you? Suffer the little children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven.
Absolutely.
So he inverts the whole thing into his own personal. Where does it come from? It was like some kind of personal virtue. Exaltation, I guess.
Yeah, great points, Matt. Totally agree. I think Paedo Communion itself, if you really think about it, is almost enough to refute Roman Catholicism. Because the Latin Church communed infants for all those centuries. And it's not accidental that the departure of Paedo Communion happens precisely when the filioque comes in and the temporal claims of the Roman bishop begin to exaggerate. So I think there's definitely a connection between those things. All right.